Welcome back. Thank you for staying with the broadcast. The executive director of the Bay Gardens Resorts is expressing concern about the possible pullout of Virgin Atlantic. He says the fact of the matter is that for Bay Gardens Resorts, the fallout could be drastic. He is further calling for greater diversification in terms of source markets, given the looming impact of Brexit and what it will mean for the UK market and St. Lucia's tourism product. The UK market remains a key source market for hoteliers operating on island. Bay Gardens Resorts is one such property. Virgin Atlantic is currently the second largest source of seats for St. Lucia from the UK market. For the Bay Gardens Hotel, that redounds to over $2 million EC worth of business for its properties alone. The possible pullout of Virgin Atlantic has the executive director of the Bay Gardens Resorts in Ovning Destang concerned. He says getting replacements for those seats is essential.
We realize that about 8,000 room nights can be accounted for by Virgin Airlines, not necessarily Virgin Holidays, but Virgin Airlines, because a lot of people who book on Expedia, on Booking.com, on numerous different websites, and other UK tour operators do use Virgin. And that 8,000 room nights actually amounts to about $2.5 million EC worth of business a year for us at Bay Gardens Resorts. A lot of people associate us with the Caribbean market, but the UK is actually a substantial source of our business. And you must remember that the UK market also is a market that you find very long stays. You find that the average length of stay from the UK is about 9 to 10 nights, whereas the Caribbean might be about 4 to 5 nights. So the UK market is very, very important.
A posture of very cautious optimism is being adopted by the executive director as it relates to cushioning the possible impact of a pullout by Virgin Atlantic.
I know that there are discussions being had by the government. I think we've all heard about that, and certainly we've been in the loop and been made aware that there are discussions being had with British Airways as well as other carriers. What we don't want, of course, is a situation where we have a virtual monopoly. Because while I know that BA has additional spare capacity, we can't assume that that spare capacity will come at the same price if they don't have significant competition. I'm glad to hear that the door may still be open with Virgin, but I think we also need to move on and look at other options as a destination.
Destang says Bay Gardens Resorts is also looking to broaden its horizons and ensure that it is not too heavily reliant on the UK market for its business, not just because of the current Virgin Atlantic situation, but also because of the very real possible negative impact of Brexit.
We are not reliant on the UK, not just, or too overly reliant on the UK, I should say, not just because of the whole situation with Virgin Airlines, but Virgin Atlantic, but also because of Brexit. We are not quite sure what impact that will have on the pound and how much the demand might be impacted. What I've seen in the past is when there's such a dramatic drop in the pound, you don't necessarily see a dramatic drop in arrivals, but what you end up seeing is a dramatic drop in the rates that you can get out of the UK. You might still see that the arrivals may not decline that much, but they'll come at very low, much lower rates, which has an impact on your bottom line, which has an impact on employment, which has an impact on everything, and it has an impact as well as on the employee's service charge. So all of that is, very concerning. I think we all kind of understand the difficult position that asking for, $2.5 million a year put us in. Put the country in, but I think at the end of the day, we all need to make sure that we find a way to replace those seats and replace them quickly.
The UK market represents as much as 90% of arrivals at some hotels here in St. Lucia. Destang says diversification of markets is a must for survival. The St. Lucia Civil Service Association, CSA, having met with the employees of Lucelec to discuss the grade structure and retirement age concerns, says it will be a waiting game before resolve is brought to staff, with both Lucelec management and CSA representatives waiting on the Labour Tribunal. General Secretary of the CSA, Claude Paul, says anxiety continues to grow with staff members nearing the age of 60.
Staff members of Lucilec, represented by the St. Lucia Civil Service Association, CSA, have been briefed on what is to come in regards to negotiations for a grade structure and the pension age. General Secretary CSA Claude Paul says the meeting, which was held on Wednesday, 7th August, served to inform its members on updates on all outstanding matters facing the negotiations.
We had our legal advisor in-house to give an update on principally the pensions matter that will come up for hearing in October at the October sitting of the appeal court. And so therefore our members were given a synopsis of the case and where we are. And we feel confident that going forward that we will get a positive decision out of the appeal court. I mean, we cannot preempt what will happen. We cannot predict these things, but we believe we have a strong case.
The October timeline outlined by Paul is said to be a point of contention for the members, who remain anxious for a decision to come about with both outstanding issues.
We were hopeful that that matter would have gone in July when the court sat in July, but unfortunately, for reasons that I don't have at this time, it did not happen. And so therefore, we have no choice. We have called on them to be patient as far as that is concerned. Of course, there will be anxiety given that you have some workers who are nearing age 60, and the practice has been that at age 60 they have to leave their employ and then have to live on a reduced pension because NIC considers 65 as the retirement age. So that those persons who are nearing retirement, of course, would be, anxious to get this matter out of the way.
In regards to the matter of the grade structure, Paul says stalled negotiations have caused a backlog of unsigned collective agreements, which all parties stand ready to resolve.
The other matter has to do with the grade structure, which is a long-outstanding matter. The 2010-2013 collective agreement remains unsigned because of the dispute with management of Lucilec over the non-inclusion of what the CSA believed was a negotiated position as far as the grade structure is concerned. Now, this matter is preventing us from negotiating successive collective agreements, so that since 2013, although the management of Lucilec honored the aspect of salary, but the inclusion of a grade structure which allows for movement along the scale is absent. And Lucilec management is anxious, I believe, equally anxious to get this matter settled so that, any outstanding liabilities may be paid and that, going forward, we can continue to dialogue with them as far as the successive collective agreements are concerned and bring closure to this matter once and for all.
Paul says the Labour Tribunal, which has met on two separate occasions, August 2018 and March 2019, to discuss the matter of negotiations regarding the grade structure, has yet to communicate a decision to the parties involved. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Solange Alfred.
Thank you, Solange. The Prime Minister's recent statement surrounding the many ways which the current administration has been working towards controlling the island's crime issue has gotten a response from the parliamentary representative for Labrie, Alpha Baptiste. He says the issue of crime is one which should not be politicized. More in this report.
The nation's attempts to curb crime may be paying off. So says Prime Minister Alan Shasney, who highlighted at a recent press briefing the many efforts which his administration have put in place to deal with the issue of crime. He says dealing with the backlog of criminal cases on a judicial level takes precedence in the crime reduction scheme. He noted efforts have also been put towards upgrading police equipment as well as the installation of CCTV cameras.
I am not the type of Prime Minister to come to the podium and jump up and down and talk about things to say we're going to be tough on crime. My government does it. These are the things that we must do, and we're proceeding to do them. And I think that once all these things come together, we're going to see a significant drop in crime. The idea of now going to a border control. A border control is recognizing that we must be able to control our borders. So when we introduced the visa regime, unfortunately, with regards to Venezuela, was clearly understanding that that was a bigger problem than we can handle. It had nothing to do with politics. It had everything to do with the security of this country. And so I want to reassure all Solutions that my government, my cabinet, are doing everything that we have to do to secure this country.
Meanwhile, Parliamentary Representative for Labrie, Alva Baptiste, says the Prime Minister's statements on crime reduction do not take away from the fact the issue of crime still persists 3 years into his tenure as leader of the government.
I'm happy if the Prime Minister will make some progress in that regard. But that's the very same Prime Minister, when he was leader of the UWP in the period leading up to the general election, said, you know, if Kenny Anthony cannot solve the crime, he will, and we will. He took responsibility for it, and he is in office, and he has not taken care of it. And this is why the Labour Party has always said that crime is not something that we should politicize. We're supposed to put mechanisms in place to ensure that we try to deal with the crime situation. If certain techniques are not working, we review it. It's just like laws. Sometimes you pass a new law and it faces a lot of objection. You come with a new version to make it less susceptible to that particular objection. So we have to continue to work hard, to put mechanisms in place, to pass the laws that are necessary.
The Prime Minister previously addressed why he did not believe the Dr. Kenny Anthony administration was capable of controlling the crime issue.
In terms of why I didn't think that the Kenny Anthony administration was going to solve crime, because they weren't doing these things. None of these things are going to happen by themselves. It's not about somebody just waking up one day and saying, we're not going to tolerate crime tomorrow. That's not going to resolve anything. It's the actions on the ground and giving the people the necessary resources and putting the proper processes in that resolve crime.
Prime Minister Shasney noted the issue of crime and security is one which will also affect the economic security of the island and must be dealt with holistically. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Sola Jalfred.
Tourism officials on St. Lucia remain optimistic over robust signs of a continued growth trajectory for the vital tourism industry. Figures for the halfway point of 2019 continue to show strong demand for St. Lucia as the important sector again recorded significant growth. Stay-over arrivals for June 2019 were up 9% from June of last year. This means year-to-date growth has increased 6.5%, up from 6.1% last month. The figure also marked the 5th record-breaking month for the year. Tourism Minister Dominic Fede says the figures are encouraging for St. Lucia's tourism sector. He says the government is clearly on track and surpassing even its own projections. The destination has experienced growth for the month of June due to increases in the island's main source market, the United States, which saw a 17% increase. Germany saw a 31% increase, the rest of Europe 9%, the Caribbean 7%, and Canada with an increase of 20%.
We also saw some preliminary figures coming out of the St. Lucia Tourism Authority for the month of July, which suggest that the month of July grew by 25% over the month of July for 2018. This is no surprise because I think that we've all seen the unprecedented number of arrivals and visitors that came for the carnival festivities would have added significantly to those increased numbers.
The growth can be attributed to multiple factors. Among them is increased airlift from the U.S., directly attributed to a second American Airlines flight out of Miami that brought on over 5,000 additional seats. Seats were also added on by JetBlue. Airlift out of the Canadian market also increased with an additional 256 seats from WestJet and Air Canada combined. The tourism minister says they are building on that momentum and looking to increase airlift from the UK.
And we have some very good news from one of our British carriers who have already announced that they will be putting on an extra 7,000 seats. Those 7,000 seats will add to an estimate which we have done, which suggests that we have 18,000 seats in unused capacity from UK carriers coming to St. Lucia. It means, therefore, that we're very close to closing the Virgin Gap, or we're very close to closing any shortfall that may have come about by the reduced seats coming from the planned Virgin Atlantic departure from our destination. Now, 10 months out, this is really good news. We are well ahead of schedule in terms of ensuring that we cushion the blow as much as possible.
Decreases in visitor arrivals were, however, recorded from the United Kingdom. Arrivals were down by 15% and 21% from the rest of the world.
I personally have my views about the UK market and its difficulties. There are tremendous uncertainties that are being caused by Brexit, and I think that it's going to be very difficult for the Caribbean and other long-haul destinations in the short term. When we look at what has been happening, every mainstream economist has suggested that there will be very, very tough economic times for the UK market and for the UK as an economy. And in tough economic times, there are significant impacts, negative impacts, that will be derived from short or long-haul travel.
Other factors contributing to the tourism increases were hosting of a series of events which attracted regional travelers, namely football competitions and a music concert featuring Jamaican reggae musician Sizzla Kalonji. Tourism authorities say given that there are still many exciting destination marketing initiatives to be rolled out for 2019, along with the ensuing winter season, St. Lucia looks well poised to meet and indeed surpass the record 1.2 million visitors it welcomed in 2018. This is the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Stay with us. We'll be right back.